Hi everyone, my name is Serap. I would like to welcome you to our webinar. Today I will introduce Cashflow Forecasting that allows to forecast future bank balances based on provisional future transactions. By using this module, you can generate provisional transactions based on the transactions entered already in Sage 300. It reads transaction data from different modules, from AR, AP, PO, and OE. And based on that transactions, it automatically makes the forecast. If you use SYSTRONICS Cashflows, then the product is integrated with it. After having forecasted figures, you can print the Cashflow Forecasting report and the graph. Now, let me switch to Sage 300 and show how it works. The central point of the application is the management console screen. Let's open that screen. The first thing that we need to do here is to select the bank. To which bank we want to make the forecast. Let's imagine that this is the in-sample company PR Bank. Next, we need to understand in which date range we want to make the forecast. Let's imagine that we are in the beginning of June and we want to make a forecast for 2 months up to the end of July. So in this date range, we will specify beginning of June up to the end of July and click the Go button. When I click the Go button, automatically the balance of that selected bank in the beginning of June is populated here as current balance. Now we need forecasted figures that will be populated in the grid. How we can do that? For example, if we have open AR invoices, and if the due date of that invoices are in the selected date range, then we can expect that we will get receipts for these open invoices. To do this information, we have a special screen here named as Auto-Generate Provision Transactions. I will click the button here. The pop-up screen will be opened, allowing to select from the list the transaction for which we want to make the forecast. I will select the AR invoice. As a transaction date, I will leave the invoice due date. It is possible even to add some more additional dates here. And specify the document date range that we have already specified in the main screen. Beginning of June, end of July. And after that, I will click the Go button here to populate the list of transactions, open transactions that we have in AR module. From here, we can select any transaction that we want to and deselect whichever we don't want to include in the forecast. It is even possible to edit the amounts. If we know that, for example, we will get more amount or less amount, we can edit the amount. And also it is possible to exclude them by just double clicking on the select column, not to select the transaction. Before generating this information, it is possible even to print the report to make sure that the list is correct. Now the report will be printed, and only after having the report and checking that the list is correct, we will do the process. So this is the report. 17 transactions are printed, and these transactions are provisional transactions. We call them as provisional transactions because we forecast, we anticipate that these transactions will happen by these figures. So if everything is correct, we will click the generate button here. When I click the generate button, on the main screen, this information will be populated as 17 provisional transactions. I will click close, and now on my screen, I have 17 new detail lines added here. After each detail line, the running balance of my bank will be increased accordingly, and at the end, we have a closing balance at the end of the July. So the figure will be increased based on this transaction, list of transactions. This is only information from AR model. What other cash inflow we can have? For example, if we have an open order, we can expect that we will invoice this order, and based on that invoice, we can have a receipt. So let's try whether we have in our sample company an opening order. So again, I will click the same button here, open the pop-up to generate provisional transactions, and from here, select the OE order. From the list, I will select the expected ship date and the same date range. Click Go button. And it turned out that I have just one open order for this date range. So I will generate provisional transaction based on this one. This one detail line is also added here. Now let's think about the outflow. Similar to AR invoices, we have open AP invoices, and we can expect similarly that during the due date, if the due date is inside this date range, we will make the payments. So after selecting the date range, I will populate the list of payments and generate provisional transactions. As we can already explain, it is possible to exclude transactions if we need from this list. And I will click generate. Quite big list of payments are populated here. And now, as you can see, my current balance becomes less. What other type of payments we will have? These can be done based on the open purchase orders. So I will now specify from the list of transactions PO order here. I will specify the arrival date, for example, and the date range. Okay, I will generate 6 transactions are generated, so my balance becomes quite less. What else we can have? It is possible that some inflow or outflow transactions we will have, but these will not have any. These are not be based on the existing transactions available in Sage 300. In that case, the provisional transaction should be created manually. Is it possible to do? Create manual provisional transactions? Yes. So we need to use this create provisional transactions button and to make it manually from here. So from here, I need to specify the customer amount, and it is even possible to make the allocation. We know exactly to which transaction it should be applied. And when I close it, the transaction is added, but its color is different, and we have different colors for different scenarios. And for due and overdue provision transactions, we have this color. So why it is due and overdue? Because when I created the provision transactions, I didn't pay attention in the date itself of that transaction, and the transaction is created based on the beginning of June, which is incorrect. It should be future transaction. So the date should be changed from the beginning somewhere in future. So this can be done even from here by edit the date. So I will change it to July. Next, it is possible that during this specified period, we will have some forecasting that we will start a new project. And during these projects, we will have some expenses and we will generate some income. How to do this information in the system? For that purpose, we have a button named as Create New Business. I will click that screen. It will ask to enter the description of that business, specify the customer and vendor. So from which customer we will generate the income, to which vendor we will make the expenses. So if I just specify this let's imagine that we have this type of information. And I will save it. Still, this is just an information entered in the system. The provision transactions are not created yet. To have them, there is a button here, Generate Provision Transactions. So after creating this button, 2 new provision transactions are generated for the expense and income detail lines. So after closing the screen, these 2 more transactions are added here as well. What else? Is it possible to have other type of expenses and income? Yes. For example, it is possible that you have a recurring transactions. For example, you know that you will pay a rental expenses. weekly basis, for example. This can be done by specifying a new recurring transaction. Specify the schedule, for example, weekly. Vendor payment. Specify the vendor and the amount. Let's say 500. Save. And now, based on that recurring transaction, we can generate provisional transactions. And these provisional transactions can be generated up to specified date. Only one based on the schedule, or only for one for the specific date. So I will click to generate just one provisional transaction based on this one. If everything has been done already, we have our list generated here. In case let me maximize the screen. As you can see, the amount in negative amounts are shown in red color, and positive ones are in black color. If we know that we can postpone our payment, for example, from this date range to another later on, for example, to August, we can change it. And if it is outside of our selected range, then the transaction will not be shown here. And if everything is done, we can say that our job is completed and we have our forecasting and forecasted transactions are shown here. If it has been done already, we can print the report. Let me click this report button and to print the cash flow forecasting report. Everything is selected here. We just need to specify whether we want to print it in detail or in a summary form. Let's start from the summary one and print it. What we will have in this report, it shows for each period, it shows the opening balance, inflow and outflow amounts, and the closing balance. That's all. If we need all transactions included in the report, we will choose the detail form. Also, it is possible to include the graph option to show the graph at the end of the report. I will specify the weekly form for the graph and print the report. Here we have the list of inflow and outflow transactions, and if we will go to the last page, we will see the graph, what is printed. And it shows graphically how the bank balance will be changed during this 2 months period. Okay, let's close everything. And let's imagine that the time passes and now we are in the beginning of August, after these 2 months. Let me log in as the beginning of August. What happens in that time? Since the time is passes, we now all our information become obsolete and our provisional transactions become overdue. There is a special screen, provisional transactions alert screen, that shows these overdue transactions. And actually all our transactions will become overdue here. It is showing the transaction date, description, and amount here. So if it is obsolete, it is possible to delete them. For example, I will click the delete button on my keyboard and the transaction will be deleted. Or there is a delete PTs button here, allow to delete overdue provision transactions by a list. From here, you can select all of them, delete by just one go, or by select just manually transactions that we need to delete and delete them. And what should be done after deleting transactions, provision transactions? Then we need to create the actual transactions. Since the invoices will be paid during this date range, then we need an actual receipt and payment transactions. So we can delete them from here, go to different modules, AR, AP, and OE, PO modules, create the actual transactions manually. Another option is, instead of deleting them and creating them manually, to generate them automatically from the module itself, Cashflow Forecasting module. This can be done by opening the screen, the main management console screen, select the transaction, and use the button named as Generate Actual Transaction, one by one. So I will click this button. It is saying what type of receipt you want to generate. From the available list, I will specify the actual receipt. Now it is asking to select the batch number. If I have an open batch number, we can use it, or I can create a new batch, and I will click the Generate button. What happens now? Now it will open for me the customized AR receipt entry screen. Everything, it seems the same as the receipt entry screen, but it is opened from the Cashflow Forecasting module. And here, the information has been, everything has been entered automatically correctly. So even the allocation has been done here, if we have that allocation in our provision transaction. So we don't need to do anything here. We just can save it and post it. That's all. What happens? Now my provision transactions become completed. It is disappeared from the list of my management console, and instead of that provision transaction, now we have an actual transaction. Similarly, we can do with the other transactions as well. This type of job, of course, cannot be done automatically for the whole list. It should be done manually, one by one, in order to make sure that the receipt and payments are created correctly.